During the summer of my junior year, my parents had to go out of town for a week to visit my grandparents, which left me in charge of the house. When I saw my dad's car drive over the hill and out of sight, I went back inside. I'll be honest, I'm usually pretty tame in my interests. I don't even drink. The only drug I do recreationally is weed. Even then, it's only an occasional thing for me. I was planning to binge watch and play some video games during the entire week. First, I had to make sure I had the necessary accompaniments before engaging in these activities. From my fridge, I grabbed several bags of lime chip Tostitos, spicy chili Doritos, guacamole, some queso dip, salsa, spinach artichoke dip, and the 2-liter of DR pepper. I also grabbed a large towel from the laundry in case of messes. As an aside, spinach artichoke dip is *sking amazing. I had just got everything set up when I heard my doorbell ring. I let out an annoyed groan. I thought it was my parents who forgot something, and that they would lecture me upon seeing all the junk food I had laid out in the living room. They have a bad habit of that. Instead, I opened the door to find my 3 friends standing in front of me were my friends Nelson, Orlando, and Phil. "What are you guys doing here?" I asked. "What do you think?" Nelson said. "We're here to shoot the shit since your parents will be out of town for the week." "How did you know about that?" "I heard my dad talking about it with yours." Anyway, before I could respond, he stepped inside along with Orlando and Phil. "Hey," I protested. "I have to watch the house until they get back. I can't have you guys *sking *d up for me." "Calm down, Max. You have nothing to worry about," Orlando said in a calming voice. "He's right. Besides, we know what your parents are particular about, and with the 3 of us here, your house-watching duties will be easier," Phil assured me. While his rationalization didn't quite add up in my head for a number of factors, I did feel kind of dickish for wanting them to leave after they'd wanted to come over to have some fun. "All right, fine. You guys can stay, but call me next time. Sorry about that. Everything was kind of last minute," Nelson explained. "We barely had time to gather the supplies." "Wait, you mean?" "Hell yeah." From his pockets, he pulled out a giant bag of weed and some rolling papers. As I said, I only smoke occasionally. With that being said, I would be lying if I told you I didn't get excited over how glorious the stuff he had looked. "Where did you get that?" "My dealer got access to some good shit recently. I was saving it for a special occasion and figured this a perfect time to smoke it." "You know what? *CK it. Let's do it. That's what I like to hear." Nelson gave me a friendly slap on the back. He and the others entered my living room. "Oh, *CK yeah, Doritos," Phil exclaimed. The next 8 or so hours were a bit of a blur for me. I recall smoking the weed and it hitting me pretty damn hard. After that, I'm pretty sure we played Mario Kart for 2 hours and watched one of the Toy Story movies after. I want to say it was the second one. That's the one with Jesse, right? Anyway, we were an hour in when I began to freak out. "Guys, I've heard something about this movie," I said. "What is it?" Nelson inquired. "Okay, so think about this. If the toys in the movie die, Annie won't know and keep playing with them." "Where did you see that?" "From someone on Twitter. It's freaking me out something fierce." "Can the toys even die?" Orlando asked. "I mean, even Sid's toys were still alive despite what he did to them. Plus, they don't have muscles or organs, so it's not as if they can starve to death." "Yay, but they can still feel pain, like when Sid burned Woody's forehead with a magnifying glass," Phil pointed out. "That's true. I guess that means they can if they're set on fire or something similar to that." "Oh God, that's horrible," I said. "And if that happened in front of a lot of people, they'd have to hold in their screams as they're burning alive, or else people would know that toys are alive." "How are they alive? Is it natural or some kind of weird black magic nobody talks about in the movie?" "Guys, I think the weed is too strong for Max. Turn off the movie. We don't want him freaking out anymore," Nelson said. They complied and shut off the move. Then Orlando told me to relax. "I'm not sure if I can. I keep picturing the toys melting and only being able to scream internally." "God damn it, Nelson, look what the weed you brought did to Max," Phil said. "Hey, it's not my fault. None of us are freaking out. These things happen sometimes." "Where did your dealer get this stuff anyway?" Orlando asked. "I think he mentioned something about a dark web, whatever that is." "Really? I know about that. I've been on there a couple times." "You have? What's it like?" "Not too exciting, to be honest. There are places to buy drugs and weapons, and occasionally I'll come across a weird game. If I come across anything I think is shady, though I dip out before shit hits the fan. Do you guys want to see it? Depends. Hey, Max, can we use your laptop for this? Truth be told, I already knew the dangers of the deep web. Sober me would have advised against going on there. High me, on the other hand, had a different response. Hell yeah. F***ing internet exploring. Let's go for it. I think we can take that as a yes, Orlando said. Again, my memory gets kind of blurry at that point. I remember Orlando accessing the dark web through a special browser, and him coming across this weird site. It had all these different pictures and symbols. From what I can remember, a picture showed a statue of some kind of creature that seemed as if somebody crossed a deer and a goat. There was also another one that seemed to be a combination of a bat and a horse. A symbol showed a mantis holding up a serpent that was coiled around what I can only describe as a folded cross. Imagine someone made a cross out of construction paper. Now picture them taking the left and right intersecting points of it and folding them down towards the center. That's the best way I can explain it. There were also different languages we didn't recognize as Orlando kept scrolling. "What's that?" Nelson asked, pointing to something. "Is that in English?" Orlando hovered the cursor over it, which highlighted some kind of hyperlink. Clicking on it took him to the same page, except in English. "Oh, so these are ritual instructions," Phil said. "It seems to be that way," Orlando replied. "Want to try one just for the hell of it?" Nelson suggested. At this point, you may be thinking, "Max, please tell me you tried to tell them that this was a bad idea." I wish I did. I really do. Again, I would have objected to their idea had I not been high. Instead, I could only lay on my couch and stare up at the ceiling as Orlando instructed them. I only sort of paid attention to what Orlando was saying at that point. I think it involved making a picture on the floor in flour and drawing some symbols in it from something red. He also mentioned some candles and the requirement of chanting a certain phrase. Cut to 10 or so minutes later, the lights started flickering, and I could hear what sounded like thousands of voices chanting at once. "Guys," I asked, getting up, "what's going on in there?" "Oh Jesus," Phil said. "Max, I think we have *seek it up. We have *seek it up, big time." Following that, I felt the house rapidly shake. "What the hell did you guys do?" I shouted. The next thing I knew, there was a deafening growl coming from the kitchen. Hearing it sobered me right the hell up. I shot up from the couch and ran to the kitchen. Going into it, I saw a swirling vortex on the floor. Next to it was a bottle of strawberry syrup. From the vortex came a hand. Thick fur resembling steel wool coated it. It gripped my counter, allowing what was on the other side to pull itself up and into my kitchen. Its head resembled that of a buck or deer mixed with a goat. I'm not sure if I should refer to the things sticking out of its head as antlers or horns, since they looked like both. I guess I'll refer to them as horntlers. So its horntlers were so sharp in appearance I wouldn't be surprised if they could pierce steel. Of course, I was the first person that F***ing thing laid eyes on. Its eyes were shark-like, and its teeth were as well. Its height was staggering, and its physique made me think it could move a fully grown oak with ease. Not only was it big, it was also fast, as it was able to grab me by the throat before I could react. "Guys, its F***ing got me. Do something," I yelled, trying to pry its fingers off my throat. Its grip was akin to being trapped by a vice. I attempted to free myself by giving it a hard kick in the eye. This only succeeded in ***ing it off. Its roar was earth-shattering, and the scent of blood and sulfur was heavy on its breath. While this was going on, I could hear my friends chattering about what to do. Orlando, who I heard going into my fridge, asked someone to toss him my dad's Bible. Next, I heard some pages of it getting torn out. In the back of my mind, I was concerned because my parents are pretty religious. As you can imagine, however, the 8-foot-tall monstrosity gripping my throat was the more pressing matter at the time. As it opened its mouth and got ready to bite into me, Orlando yelled at it, "The power of Christ compels you." Both I and the demon turned to see him and the others with open water bottles. They splashed water onto it. The moment the water made contact with its fur, it let out a hiss of pain. I could see the part of its body that had become wet was sizzling. My friends kept splashing it. In response, it growled at them and tossed me aside. Its throw was so strong it ended up knocking me out upon impact. I faintly remember the sound of splintering wood prior to everything going black. I awoke some time later. Sharp pain was running through my back. "Guys," I groaned out. "He's awake," Max exclaimed, rushing over to me. "How are you feeling, Max? That thing got you pretty good." "I feel like I got shoved through a carfy." The realization of what happened and what I was lying on dawned on me. I sat up and glanced back. To my horror, my mom's coffee table was in splinters. On top of that, I had set all my snacks on it. That meant Doritos and Tostitos had been crushed into my carpet along with all those dips I had leaving deep stains. Not to mention, that stuff was coating the back of my shirt. I also saw bits of broken glass that didn't go into me, so I guess I should count myself as somewhat lucky. Although I didn't really feel that way. My mom's screaming could make banshees cover their ears, and I dreaded to think what her reaction would be upon seeing the state of her coffee table and the carpet. I groggily got to my feet with Nelson's help. I had to lean on the wall for support due to my understandable pain. "Hey, Max, are you feeling okay?" he asked. I was shoved through a table. "What do you think?" "You're right. Dumb question. Are you okay considering your situation?" "I guess so." "How long was I out for?" "I'm not sure." "Orlando. 2 hours." "2 hours? You guys let me lay in all that shit for that long. We would have put you on the couch, but thought it would get stained. You could have laid me on my stomach." "Wait a sec. Where's Phil?" I realized that I didn't see him. An expression came over Nelson's face that basically said, "I really don't want to say what I'm about to." "About that? What? Did something happen?" "Okay, can you promise us you won't freak out?" "Why? Can you promise that?" "I'll try." "Good enough." "So, Phil isn't dead, thankfully. Thing is, he isn't in what we would call a good position either." "What do you mean?" Nelson pointed towards my front door. I turned to see that it had been busted off its hinges. The door frame was also broken in several places. If that wasn't bad enough, the corpse of our neighbor, Mr. Taylor, was lying on the floor. His neck had been broken, judging by the fact his head was facing backward. "Nelson, could you hand me a pillow?" "Yeah, sure." He grabbed one from the couch and handed it to me. I thanked him and pressed my face into it, screaming as loudly as I could. When I was done, I set the pillow back on the couch, slowly put my hands together, took a deep breath, and turned my attention back to Nelson and Orlando. "All right, tell me exactly what went down." "Okay, so after you were knocked out, we managed to drive that demon out of the house." "Oh yeah, I saw that with the water." "How did you guys do that?" "Holy water. But we don't have any." "Actually, we do," Orlando interjected. He held up a water bottle to me. In it, I could see a rolled-up Bible page that was still somewhat legible. The fact that this had actually worked stunned me. Nelson continued. "Yay, so anyway, we figured it might lead to some trouble if we left a demon deer goat thing roaming around, so we tried another ritual." "You did what?" My voice, that I had been trying to keep at a calm tone, went up 2 octaves. "Calm down. You didn't even let me finish." I laughed at that. "You're right, Nelson. Please, go on and tell me about what happened after you guys did another stupid **sking ritual. I'm sure it worked wonders judging by the corpse in my house." "You don't have to be a **ck about it, Max. Anyway, we ended up summoning this bad horse thingy." "And how did that turn out?" "Well, we were trying to get it to go after the first demon we summoned. Instead, it bit Orlando and flew off." Orlando pulled up his sleeve to reveal some bandages over his wrist. "Okay, so the second ritual failed. You still haven't explained what happened to Phil and how Mr. Taylor got here. You know how they say the third time's the charm. Please tell me you didn't." Nelson looked to Orlando for help. He picked up where we left off. "Max, we thought it was the best option to perform a third ritual despite the last 2 going horribly wrong. What made you guys possibly think doing a third one would go well?" "It was a shot in the dark, really. What we summoned that time was a specter, and it kind of possessed Phil." "Deep breaths, Max. Deep breaths," Nelson instructed, seeing that I was visibly agitated. "Even though I really don't want to ask this, I'm going to. What happened to Phil after he became possessed?" "Well, we think the noise ended up waking Mr. Taylor, and that's why he came over. Mr. Taylor lived right next door to us and had incredibly good hearing. That wasn't the first time he complained about noise levels. Unfortunately for him, however, it was his last." Nelson continued. "He started hollering at us and asked what we were doing making so much noise. That's when Phil grabbed him and snapped his neck. Then he left. So let me see if I got this straight. There are 2 demons out and about because of the rituals you guys did, plus a ghost that is currently possessing Phil and doing God knows what. Does that sum up the situation? Pretty much. Yo, I think I'm going to be sick. My knees felt weak. Max, try to remain calm. Orlando called to me. Calm? You expect me to be calm? You know what? You're right. What I have to worry about? Could it be the monstrosities you've all unleashed, or the corpse in my home? Then again, maybe I should worry about the fact my mom's coffee table has been smashed to bits, and the fact the carpet has been stained to hell, which I'm sure will elicit calm reactions from my parents. Not to mention the front door and its frame have been busted to *T. Knowing all that, I think I'll go with all of the G** above. Nelson and Orlando had been listening to my psychotic rant for admittedly longer than I would have. Finally, Nelson came over to me. Orlando, I think he's having an episode. I'm going to take him upstairs and patch him up. In the meantime, look on that site for anything that can help us. Also, if you could do something about Mr. Taylor, that would be greatly appreciated. Got it, Orlando replied. Nelson gave him a nod and led me upstairs. After a while, he was eventually able to calm me down. Is it bad? I asked. I had taken off my shirt to let Nelson see the damage that had been to my back. It's not too bad. There are some scratches and a little blood. Other than that, you should be good to go once we've got you bandaged up. Aren't I fortunate? I said with heavy sarcasm in my voice. Hey, nobody has called the police yet. I'd say that's lucky. Let's hope it doesn't run out then. I put on another shirt, and we went back downstairs. Orlando had wrapped Mr. Taylor in a bedsheet and laid him against the wall. I did my best to ignore this while we spoke to Orlando. Find anything? Nelson asked him. I've been trying. There's so much on this site. Finding the information we need is going to take a while. How long is a while? I impatiently said. In case you haven't noticed, time is very much of the essence. I'm aware of that, and am searching this site as fast as I can. I don't suppose you have any suggestions on how to speed things up. Did you try using the Find and Page feature? Orlando paused, and an expression of realization came over his face. Using it, Orlando was able to find out what we needed to do to get rid of the demons and ghost. As it turned out, we would need a grill, some charcoal, lighter fluid, a lighter, some cinnamon, and some kind of meat. Armed with this knowledge and our holy water, we headed out after Nelson grabbed something from the kitchen. We headed to Nelson's house since it was the closest. We got in his truck, and he drove us down the road. All right, the deer goat demon and horse bat thingy shouldn't be too hard to find, he said, speeding down the road. Phil might be a bit trickier to find. Orlando helped Nelson watch the front while I watched the back. Nelson, turn around. I think I saw Phil. It was a bit too far to tell if it was him. However, considering not many people crab walk across the street with their head facing backward, I figured that was a safe assumption. Nelson made a U-turn and pulled into where I pointed Phil had gone. It turned out to be a parking lot with a Rooms to Go and Walmart. Keep your eyes peeled in case one of them tries to sneak up on us, Orlando advised. With water bottles in hand, we stepped outside. Hang on, Nelson said, going to his trunk. What is it? I impatiently asked. He came back around now holding a fishing rod he used on trips with his dad. What is that going to do? I said. It's going to help us catch Phil. I even got bait. He held up the bag of sour gummy worms, which are Phil's favorite kind of candy. I was about to tell him that this was a stupid idea, and not to take things from our pantry without asking when a pained scream rang out over the parking lot. Not wasting any more time, we raced towards its source. We found a Rooms to Go employee, or rather what was left of him. His body had been ripped open, leaving his insides spilled out on the street. Oh God, I said, feeling a strong wave of nausea come over me. Yep, that is some F*** kid up shit right there, Nelson stated, wrinkling his face in disgust. I think I can still see his heart beating. I suggest averting your attention from this, Orlando advised, clearly trying to keep from puking as well. We tore our gazes from the body. By doing this, we found a trail of blood, plus some bloody hand and shoe prints. They led to the back entrance of Rooms to Go that had been left open, and continued inward. Fantastic. Now we'll have to clean all this up, I said. Orlando, how do you think we should proceed? Well, considering that Walmart is still open, I think we should try to find Phil before someone comes out of it. The question of why nobody came out of it to investigate the scream briefly crossed my mind. I admit, I probably wouldn't either in this situation. God knows, that kind of job is bad enough without getting murdered. Still, the possibility of them taking action by calling the cops wasn't lost on me. In that regard, we thought it best to speed things up. We thought it would be a simple matter of following the bloody prints to Phil. Instead, we found more prints all over the floor going in multiple directions. God damn it, I said. How are we going to find him now? We could split up, Nelson suggested. Hell no. Are you crazy? You saw what happened to that guy out there. Let's just search together, Orlando said. Not long into our search, we found 3 other unfortunate employees. One, who seemed to be the manager judging by his uniform, was laying against the wall. He actually seemed pretty relaxed other than the fact he was sitting in a pool of blood with his head 4 feet from his body with chunks taken out of it. The other 2 workers lied on top of each other. One was missing their arms, and the other their legs. The night shift sure is a B*TCH, Nelson remarked. I think that goes without saying at this point, I replied. Knowing that Phil could be hiding anywhere in the store, we proceeded with extreme caution. We continued for several minutes when Orlando made us pause. I thought I saw something over there, he said, pointing to the table section. Even though I couldn't see Phil, something else did catch my eye, making me gasp. What's wrong? Nelson asked in an alarmed tone. I went over to one of the coffee tables. It was the exact same kind as my mom's that had been smashed. Holy shit. I need to take this with me. Max, I don't think now is the right time for this, Orlando said. Yeah, you're right. We should wait until we've found Phil. Then we can. I was interrupted by a loud growling. From behind another table leaped Phil. He landed on top of me and began trying to claw my face. Guys, help, I screamed, trying to hold up my foot. I brought up my leg in order to keep him away from me. His eyes were black and full of primal savagery. He snarled at me, revealing his teeth that were coated in blood. The scent of it and human flesh on his breath was enough to make my eyes water. Don't worry, Max. I got this, Nelson yelled, throwing back the fishing rod that had a sour gummy worm attached to its hook. Nelson, for the love of Christ, that's not going to work, I told him as Phil was attempting to scratch at my eyes. Most likely due to being possessed, he was a lot stronger than he usually was. My leg eventually gave out, and he pinned my arms to the floor. He reared his head back with his mouth wide open to take a bite out of me when the line of Nelson's fishing rod came zipping towards us. Would you believe me if I told you it actually worked in getting his attention? I wouldn't, and I was there. He jumped off me and towards it. He managed to snag the hook in his mouth. I watched all this with a dumbfounded expression on his face. His body jerked and twisted in ways that I don't think is normally possible. Meanwhile, Nelson was trying his hardest to reel him in. He's a fighter, he grunted, yanking on the fishing rod. Max, help us out here, Orlando called, assisting him. I rushed over and grabbed the handle along with him. Together we managed to overpower Phil and yank him towards us. When he was close enough, Orlando fought fast and pulled out his water bottle. He splashed his face with, inflicting pain upon the spirit that was possessing him. He fell back, managing to free himself of the fishing line in the process. Grab him, Orlando ordered, snatching a twine of rope off a table. Nelson grabbed Phil's arms while I grabbed his legs. Despite his thrashing, we managed to carry him to the coffee table that was the same as my mom's and put him on it. With the ropes, Orlando tied him to it, making sure to cover his mouth, thereby muffling his growling. 1 down. 2 to go, Nelson said. If just one was this much of a pain in the ass, I am not looking forward to finding the other 2, I remarked. Actually, Orlando, is there any way you can exorcise Phil right now? That way he can help us search. Sorry, Max, the ritual I found is an all-in-one deal if you know what I mean. Getting the things to unpossess only Phil would take longer than doing what we are now. I sighed in annoyance but understood. We lifted the coffee table and carried it out along with Phil. Okay, that takes care of that, I said as Nelson closed the hatch once we had loaded it and Phil into his truck. Let's take 5 before going after the other 2. This cardio's going to be the death of me, Nelson told us, leaning against his trunk. Agreed, Orlando replied. Aside from that, we should decide how to proceed from here. We decided that one of us would stay to keep an eye on Phil. I reluctantly agreed to do it. If something happens, call us, Orlando told me. Oh sure. I bet that'll work wonders as I'm getting impaled by the deer goat, or snagged and carried off to be devoured by the bad horse. Don't worry. We won't be gone long. Good luck, Nelson said. I watched them run up to the store and disappear inside. I guess it's just you and me, I told Phil. He gave me a muffled growl in response. At least he can't bite me, I thought. Between the deer goat and bat horse, I'd prefer the former due to the fact I can run pretty fast. I'd have a decent shot of running to one of the trees and climbing it if it came down to that. 10 minutes of nervous watching went by, and I decided to get my phone out and call Nelson to see how things were coming along. As I was about to do this, what I can only describe as a neighing screech echoed above me. I glanced up in time to see the bat horse descending upon me. Shit, I yelled, narrowly avoiding getting snatched by its claws and sliding under Nelson's truck. It landed beside his truck. Its claws clicked on the ground as it was searching for me. This is it, I thought. It's going to find me and carry me off to drain me of my blood or something. Wait, why do I get the feeling I'm forgetting something? I saw its knees bend slightly as it was about to peek under Nelson's truck. Something diverted its attention that came from the trunk. Oh shit, Phil, I cursed, getting out from under the truck. I made it out in time to see it lifting him along with the coffee table from the trunk. Without thinking, I leaped at it, managing to grab hold of the other end of the table. Let go, a shoal, I screamed at it, only to get a deafening roar in response. The thought that what I had just done was a terrible idea didn't occur to me until I was roughly 10 feet off the parking lot. I let out a scream that was a lot more high-pitched than I intended it to be. As it was about to carry us higher, Phil managed to break free of his restraints. The bat horse was carrying him by his ropes, so I guess it must have cut through enough for him to get loose. Having freed himself of his restraints, he pounced from the table in midair and onto the bat horse. This left me to fall along with the table. Fortunately, I managed to land while keeping it from hitting the ground. Unfortunately, its weight in combination with the height I was dropped from caused my ankle to twist on impact. Despite the intense pain shooting up my right leg, I managed to gently set the table down. Phil was still on the bat horse and clawing at its face. It managed to fling him off, and with my luck, he of course landed on me. I yelled in pain, feeling my right leg break under his right. He didn't pay any attention to my anguished cries, and instead stepped off me as if I was an unfortunate bug that had been crushed by his shoe. He only stared as the creature flew at him. I wondered why he made no move to defend himself, or at least dodge. I got my answer when it was a few feet from him. He was facing sideways from me as he was staring at the demon. His mouth opened wide, and I could see a light begin shining from it and his eyes. The ghost or specter, or whatever you want to call it, went out of him and into the bat horse. As it did, I could see that it was shapeless aside from a pair of glowing yellow eyes. The demon reacted to being taken over by basically spazzing out. It jerked and twisted while flapping its wings. Phil was understandably groggy, having gotten free of possession only moments ago. He shook off his dizziness and looked around in confusion. He saw me and asked how he got to where he was when a bright flash caught our attention. The bat horse was now glowing with the specter's light. It kept flickering from solid to translucent. It dove towards Phil with a much faster speed than it had previously. He had no time to react. He was once again possessed. "Are you f***ing kidding me?" I groaned. At that point, I thought I was definitely f***c kid. Even if my leg wasn't broken, there was no way I could have outrun Phil with how fast he was. That feral glint in his eyes returned. I could only mentally prepare myself for what I hoped would be a quick demise. He was about to jump on me when a roar rang out over the parking lot. Nelson and Orlando were running towards us. Behind them was the deer goat. Impaled on its horntlers were 2 Walmart employees. I think it decided to have a little fun in the store, and that's why nobody came out of it. Nelson was pushing a buggy full of the things we needed, aside from the grill, which Orlando pushed. Now, Phil's attention was on them, more specifically, the deer goat. It stopped chasing Nelson and Orlando and focused its gaze on him. They went past him and brought the stuff to the truck. Phil dashed towards the monster and stopped. Nelson parked the buggy beside his truck and knelt down to me. "Max, are you okay?" he asked. My leg is broken. That means I'm F***ing dandy. Oh, sorry. I didn't notice that. How did Phil get free? Orlando said, staring at him as he was still engaged in his stare down. I explained to them what happened. Well, what do you call that? Possession. I didn't even know ghosts could possess demons. Nelson said. Neither did I, but we can worry about the logistics of all this later when we aren't in immediate danger. Orlando commented. We should get things ready while they're distracted. With my leg broken, I could only watch Phil and the demon as Nelson and Orlando set things up. The way they stared each other down was similar to how cats do prior to engaging in battle. He let out a hiss, and they lunged at one another. In spite of the size difference, Phil managed to match its strength. Neither could make the other budge an inch. This struggle went on until eventually they traded blows. He gave it a hard punch across the face, and he returned the favor by knocking it back. He landed on all fours and scurried around it so fast it couldn't keep track of him. He jumped on its back, and it was trying to shake him off. During this, I glanced over to see how things were coming along with Nelson and Orlando. Is it ready yet? I asked. Have some patience. These things can take a while, Orlando responded. My bad. It's not as though time is of the essence or anything. Chill out, Max, Nelson cut in. We're nearly ready. Orlando had lined the grill with the other items except for the aforementioned meat. Nelson had it. He held a bag of beef jerky. I checked on Phil as Orlando was pouring the lighter fluid. The demon was screaming in pain as he was yanking at its horntlers. Somehow, he had managed to pin it down. I was confused as to what he was doing at first. Then saw that he was attempting to rip its horntlers out. My mouth fell open in shock. I wondered if he would actually be able to do it. Sure enough, he ripped them loose with a sound akin to branches snapping. Jesus F***ing hell, Nelson exclaimed. Hearing the deer goat's screams actually made me feel sort of bad for it. Phil smiled and took bites of the employees that were still attached to its detached horntlers. Then turned towards us and smiled. Guys, please tell me you're nearly done, I said. Nelson, pour the jerky in and light the fire, Orlando instructed. I'll read the chant. Nelson poured the jerky in and took out a match, then dropped it in. As the flames soared up, Orlando rapidly spoke the chant. Phil was nearly on us when he stopped. His body was convulsing, and the specter's light shone so brightly in him I could see his skeleton. I think it's working, I shouted. Keep going. The specter, along with the bat horse, came out of Phil's mouth and were sucked towards the grill. A portal formed over it that they were pulled into. The deer goat's corpse was pulled in as well, and the portal closed and exploded in a bright flash. I could see stars when it cleared. Phil was lying unconscious in the parking lot, so Nelson and Orlando put him and me into the truck. Man, that was some wild shit, Nelson said. Yo, maybe next time you guys should listen to me, I replied. Settle down. We did help you out, Orlando told me. Fair enough. I'm worried about what'll happen to Phil, though. His DNA is probably all over the store, and so is ours now that I think about. Actually, that reminds me of something. The deer goat caused a fire by knocking some water jugs over and causing them to spill towards a plugged-in floor polisher. Did that start a fire? It did. How far has it spread? Last we saw it was heading towards the grilling section. Wait, doesn't that have propane tanks? My question was answered by a massive explosion that came from inside Walmart, the flames of which spread to rooms to go. Drive. F***ing drive, I urged. When we got home, Nelson got in the new coffee table. Orlando helped me inside and took care of Mr. Taylor's body. Nelson got some cleaning supplies and assisted me in cleaning out the stains. Mr. Taylor has been taken care of, Orlando informed us when he had come back inside. That's good, I said. What about Phil? He slept peacefully on the couch as if he hadn't become possessed and killed a bunch of people. I think I have an idea, Nelson said. Orlando, can you help me? They carried him upstairs. Later they put him back on the couch with the blood cleaned off of him and his shirt changed. Orlando threw the one he had on into the washer. Ow, my head, he murmured upon waking up. What happened? I thought I was in a parking lot. And why do I taste metal? We thought it best not to tell him what actually happened, and simply told him that we managed to exorcise the demons and spirit without any trouble. I wish I would have been awake to see that. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, I said. Too bad I passed out. That's never happened to me. It's probably because of low blood sugar or something. Hey, quick question. Do you ever watch the local news? Not really. Why? No reason. Mr. Taylor's body was discovered the following day. Orlando had laid him next to his ladder that was propped up against his house, so the official story was that he had fallen and broken his neck. Oddly enough, I only saw the fire briefly mentioned on the news. I'm guessing runes to go, and Walmart wanted to keep it under wraps since it can't be determined how it got started, and they were trying to avoid a lawsuit. Aside from the broken leg that I had to explain to my parents by telling them I fell down the stairs, it was a pretty good summer. Nelson was able to get his cousin who works in construction to replace the broken door, so I managed to avoid that trouble with my parents. Hopefully, no other weird and dangerous shit is in my future.